Hollywood has perfected the movie hero and the villain. This took years, but they have a formula to make the audience love or hate anyone. This video shows the techniques movies use to evoke contempt for the bad guy. And then we'll show you how the media is using these same techniques to manipulate us. Warning, spoilers are ahead. In the early days of movies, the story was generally quite simple. There was the protagonist, or the hero, and the antagonist, also called the villain. The hero was good, and the villain was bad. The hero was usually merciful and benevolent, only resorting to violence when there was no other option, and willing to sacrifice themselves for the cause. The hero was someone we wanted to be, which made it easy to side with the hero. There was nothing redeeming or appealing about the villain. The villain was usually degenerate and lacked virtue. Furthermore, movies embodied them with unfavorable features: a scowl, an angry countenance, horns, red eyes, green skin, etc. Over time, to make movies more complex, more interesting, and less predictable, Hollywood has produced movies with less virtuous heroes. This is called the anti-hero. The anti-hero has flaws. Sometimes they look out for their own self-interests and can even be vengeful at times. This change was coupled with villains who were more interesting, more attractive, and desirable. But this introduces a big problem. How would audiences root for a degenerate or perverse hero? Hollywood found the answer to be able to always show the hero in the limelight, regardless of their deeds, and they have perfected their process over the years. We're going to show you the top 3 techniques Hollywood uses to get viewers to like someone over another. Technique 1. Dehumanize the enemy. Looking a human in the face and hurting or killing them is actually a hard thing to do. We are inherently sympathetic creatures, and we do not like to witness another human suffering. It is much easier to watch the hero hurt an inanimate object, faceless goon, than a living person with a soul, a family, and interests. A common technique Hollywood uses to diminish the villain is to dehumanize and anonymize them. This makes the hero look a lot less like a bully when he or she is kicking enemy butt. This can be accomplished in a variety of ways, making the enemies faceless, either by covering the face, often with a helmet or sometimes just the eyes, or they just don't show the face at all. In the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith, notice how hard it is to ever get a view of the agents' faces who are attempting to kill Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Crazy, huh? Even in the grand finale, you can't see a single face. Another is removing emotion, like with zombies. And yet another is to make them humanoid, but not actually human, like aliens or goblins. The less human-like something is, the less likely a viewer will be sympathetic when they get hurt. Second, Hollywood will show the villain as inferior because they lack virtue. The quick and easy way to do this is to frame the villain as rude, cold, and disrespectful, often to people who are trying to help them.
No, I'm so sorry, Miranda. I actually did return last night.
Details of your incompetence do not interest me.
No! Why, you miserable beast, I'll turn you into furball soup.
You want to go to Taco Bell?
I can't go to Taco Bell. I'm on an all-carb diet. Karen, you are so stupid.
This is often accompanied by a disdainful and belligerent attitude.
Hope you don't mean yourself.
Dare you talk to me? Filthy little mudblood.
Take your time!
What are you looking at, butthead?
Tell you what, dipshit. You don't like my policies, you can just come on down here and smooch my big old white butt.
Notice the difference between Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty and Maleficent in the Maleficent movie. Look how she treats her underlings in each movie. Here she is in Sleeping Beauty, where she is the villain.
Idiots! Imbeciles!
And in the live-action movie Maleficent, where she is portrayed as the hero.
Good morning, Mr. Chanterelle. I love your cap.
That's quite a shift in attitude. Another example is in Despicable Me, Gru, who was initially presented as the villain, is actually the hero of the story. Therefore, he does get after his minions.
Hey, Dave, listen up, please!
But later they show that he really does love them. The last and by far the most potent technique is punitive intent, and can be summed up best by this line from the Captain America Winter Soldier movie.
Hey, Cap, how do we know the good guys from the bad guys? If they're shooting at you, they're bad.
This means any harm that befalls the villain is justified if the villain has worse intent than the hero. In other words, Hollywood can present the villain or antagonist as intending to harm the hero and therefore allow the villain to get hurt. After all, it's logical for Jerry to hurt Tom. Tom was trying to kill Jerry. It's self-defense. And there are endless movie scenes where self-defense is used as justification to punish the bad guy.
You shall not harm Harry Potter.
But it goes beyond self-defense. This concept is the lifeblood of action flicks, many based on revenge. The hero has been wronged in some way, so now they can kick butt in the name of payback.
I told you I would find you.
But Hollywood goes even further than this. If the villain has done any harm at all, punishment is now justified. Here's a quick example. In Guardians of the Galaxy, Peter Quill's dad, Ego, locates Peter, brings him back to his planet, and convinces him to assist in expanding. None of this warrants the bad guy title. Attacking his father would look really immoral. So right as Peter and Ego are about to start expanding the universe, Ego mentions this.
You said you loved my mother.
And that I did. My river lily, who knew all the words to every song that came over the radio. I returned to Earth to see her 3 times, and I knew if I returned a 4th, I'd never leave. The expansion, reason for my very existence would be over, so we did what I had to do. But it broke my heart to put that tumor in her head.
What? Why would Ego kill Peter's mother? He could have just not returned to the planet, but it doesn't make sense to kill her. This is clearly placed to make Ego the bad guy. Peter's now justified to kill Ego, and he does.
That sounds bad.
This technique gives Hollywood license to make the protagonist completely immoral, as long as their enemy is as bad as them. The hero could now steal from a thief, beat up a bully, kill a murderer. They can even be a serial killer as long as they are killing other serial killers. And while this tit-for-tat thought process justifies pranks, bullying, and violence, Hollywood still goes further because retribution is based on what the bad guy intended to do, not what they actually did. Therefore, sometimes the villains haven't done anything bad enough to deserve their punishment. Here's an example. In the movie Home Alone, the burglars Marv and Harry are brutally attacked throughout the movie by the protagonist, Kevin McAllister. For guys merely wanting to steal some goods, these punishments are severely disproportionate. In order to justify this harm, listen to what Marv and Harry say when they capture Kevin at the end of the movie.
What are we gonna do to him, Harry?
I'll do exactly what he did to us. And I'll burn his head with a blowtorch.
You can smash his face with an iron.
I can slap him right in the face with a paint can, maybe.
Or shove a nail through his foot.
By saying that they intended to hurt Kevin in all the ways he hurt them, the punishments were now justified. All Hollywood needed to do was to show that the bad guys had intent. And that is the trick. As long as it appears the villain intends to commit harm, we feel contempt for them and will tolerate a disproportionate amount of retribution. So those are the 3 techniques: dehumanizing an opponent to make us less sympathetic to them when they get hurt, demonstrating that the enemy lacks virtue, and showing that it's okay to hurt the enemy if they have harmful intentions. In nearly every movie, Hollywood uses these 3 techniques to paint people into any view they desire. This is why we accept the Wicked Witch of the West as a villain when, if anything, she's a victim. Dorothy kills her sister and takes the slippers that were rightfully hers. She just wanted to get them back. And the reverse of this is true as well, which is why Han Solo from Star Wars is so endearing, even though he really is a scoundrel.
I know.
Now let's explore how the modern day media has learned to use these same 3 techniques to elicit contempt for others. Videos were taken from various news sources including network news, daytime talk, late night, and radio shows. Just as Hollywood dehumanizes its enemies to make them more palatable targets, the media uses a number of ways to make their opponents less human. Here are a few examples. First, when networks respond to political events, they rarely invite the actual person in question to defend their actions. They typically let a panel of overwhelmingly partisan contributors react, or invite a seemingly unrelated guest to weigh in.
I am also sorry for not being more mindful of this decades ago.
There is Senator Elizabeth Warren apologizing again for claiming Native American ancestry. Governor Mike Huckabee, what is the state of her campaign?
Why are they asking former Governor Huckabee about Senator Warren's apology? Simple. Viewers will never sympathize with opposing ideology if they never hear it from anyone. Another way is to use labels to lump individuals into broad groups, diluting the person's individuality while simultaneously attaching all the stereotypes of that group. Words like liberal or Trump supporter are used to prepackage a subject of a news story. The most commonly used are Republican and Democrat. Listen to how many times Rachel Maddow labels her subjects as Republican during a 7.5-minute segment.
Republican, 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 Republicans, Republican, Republicans, Republican, Republican, Republicans, Republican, Republican, Republicans, Republican, Republican, Republicans, Republican, Republican.
Along these same lines, the media often gives disproportionate amounts of attention to an outspoken or scandal-ridden individual. The coverage implies their statements are representative of the entire group and makes it easier for audiences to loathe that group. While Hillary Clinton and President Trump have been popular targets, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Marjorie Taylor Greene are getting increasing amounts of coverage.
The front runner for worst human of 21. We got a Karen in Congress now. She's so awful.
She's nonsensical, and a straitjacket wouldn't be out of reason. Yeah, the look in her eyes, the soulless stare, the devil's eyes, and they roll over stupid. So,
furthermore, just as Hollywood paints its villains to have no virtue, modern media frames their foes to appear stupid, inferior, and less virtuous. This is done a few different ways. First, just general mockery to make them look bad.
He says what I'm thinking.
I don't know what it is. I just like the guy.
Idiot says what?
Sex and the City actress and failed gubernatorial candidate Cynthia Nixon says poor people should be allowed to steal personal goods from stores. Between her and Cuomo, I haven't heard of a choice this bad outside of states that let inmates choose how they're executed.
Next, singling out a single person from the opposing group and promoting embarrassing sound bites of them.
What do you think of the impeachment?
Come on, everybody knows what it's all about.
Read the transcript, right?
Read the transcript, right.
Have you read the transcript?
I have not read it.
But we should read the transcript.
We should.
You should use they, them pronouns. So you saying that you don't believe me.
What if I don't?
If you don't, I would consider that disrespectful, and that's actually an act of violence to misgender a trans
It's an
person,
act of
or
violence.
That is an act of violence to intentionally misgender someone, yes.
Also, as we pointed out earlier, the media rarely has a guest with an opposing view on their show. But when they do, it is not to try to understand them, but to attack them.
That annoys white Americans and white conservatives.
No, that's not right.
You
no.
want to make a campaign and stuff every...
Supported
by the time you call the cops, even if it's a great response time, you might be dead.
Again, we just have a different...
You're protected. You have a team around you.
And last is punitive intent. Like Hollywood, if the media can establish that a party has done damage, they now have license to attack them. In other words, both sides condemn violence and hate speech, but continuously stoke audience outrage.
You should be outraged by that.
Unbelievable.
I mean, this is insane.
And promote contempt for the other side.
And we're going to fight for fairness and justice.
So we have to fight this tooth and nail.
Well, we are going to resist. We are going to oppose.
And all of us need to stand up and speak out against this stuff.
So to justify their attacks, the media establishes harm committed or intended by an opposing group. This is important because as long as the opposing side is doing something worse, they can spew as much vitriol at them as they want. Listen to these examples of networks establishing harm.
First of all, there are no great religions. They're all stupid and dangerous.
They, similarly to the French Revolution, want to destroy our society.
Trump is as destructive a person in this century as Hitler, Stalin, and Mao were in the last century.
critical race theory is basically teaching people to hate our country.
Trumpism is something akin to a fascist social and political movement.
Liberalism is a forest fire right now, destroying America piece by piece.
People like me, people who hold views that are different than them, do not belong here. And they are willing to kill in the name of it.
Regardless of whether you agree with any of these statements, by establishing that the other side is so evil, it absolves them of contributing to discord. In other words, they're clearly spreading hate, but instead of being labeled hate mongers, they have painted themselves as defenders of truth. Furthermore, in a never-ending effort to establish harm, it's not uncommon for the media to exaggerate events that either are false or were completely overblown. Some recent examples include Russian collusion of the 2016 election, the removal of Dr. Seuss books and Mr. Potato Head, Michael Avenatti and Stormy Daniels' lawsuit against Trump, and the 2020 election fraud claims. I hope this video helps illuminate the tactics used to manipulate us into feeling contempt toward others. The antidote to these techniques is sincere, face-to-face conversation. It is harder to show contempt for another when that person is present. Even Jimmy Kimmel, who clearly loathed and relentlessly mocked Mike Lindell, the conservative owner of the MyPillow company, showed reasonable respect to Mike when he was a guest on his show.
You know, I don't think there's any validity to any of this stuff that you're saying. Yeah. But I think it's important that we talk to each other.
Absolutely.
And I think that...
Yes.
If you find your opinion has hardened against a political group, I invite you to seek out someone from this group, talk to them face to face, look them in the eye and have a civil conversation. Listen to their point of view and seek to truly understand it. I promise you have much more in common than you think.